Please join me as I have a conversation with one of my dear past clients who purchased her first home with her husband 6 months ago. In our conversation, we talk about her experience with our team, obtaining her home loan for the first time, and going through the journey of buying her first house.
So when you thinking back, what were your initial concerns about buying your first house?
It definitely was the affordability. I had just, you knew this, but I had just gotten a new job and, our finances looked a little bit different already. So the budget was probably our main concern. Just in our society nowadays, you tend to believe you can't do it, that it's so far out of reach that you don't even want to try. And I think that that's what we did, for the first couple years of talking that we wanted to buy a house. It just felt so far out of reach. So our main concern was budget, and then of course, location. We really needed to get out of the city. That was what our hearts were pulling on. And so those were the two main things.
And then I just remember from our initial consultation, you wanting to move out of the city and really not believing that you could afford to buy a house in the country where you really, really wanted to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was it did not feel real, which is why this one felt like, woo, it's a score.
So, how did you feel about the guidance and support you received throughout the mortgage process?
Your team was on it. The lending team, I mean, all the teams that we worked with, both on the real estate side or the our uh agent side. Thank you. Yeah, the agent side versus the lending. I mean, both teams were great, but every time I contacted you, your team was so fast, so quick, communicated really well. They were articulate. I wasn't confused. I felt very supported throughout the process. I mean, there were times I sent you a listing and you had, a hypothetical pricing to me real fast. You had it back to me really quickly, which was so crucial during that process when it's like, oh, we want to go look at this house. Is it even in our budget? Could we even afford it? And so having that constant support was crucial for our success. So it was, your team was great.
Do you remember the first house that you got into contract on?
Oh yeah. Oh
Do
yeah.
you think back on that now and think that was just divine intervention that you didn't get that house?
100%. That I said fate a couple times on this call, and that we look back a lot because when we had to pull out of escrow, our hearts were broken. I mean, you remember that we thought that was the home for us. And so when it wasn't possible anymore, at that point, we almost just thought that it wasn't the right time altogether.
What was the most valuable piece of advice you received during your home buying process?
So a kind of accumulation of things, definitely take your time, and do not rush it. If you have the time to not rush into anything, I mean, it's location it has posed to be one of the biggest things because even when we think about the home in Pollock Pines, we were in, the wilderness and it felt very isolated out there, but it was almost too isolated, right? It was like you didn't have a community around you. It felt a little bit dark, like that we have parks and stuff here. It's a lot more open. So it just felt like taking the time to step back allowed us to have this opportunity presented. But truly just taking your time in the process, not rushing into anything.
Well, and taking your time to figure out which community you want to live in,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And
Mhm.
maybe even like visiting the community at night and
Yes.
seeing what it's like at night and during the day. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, no, that's huge. That's huge. And I honestly, I've had past clients that have moved to like Grizzly Flat in the middle of nowhere, thinking that that was the lifestyle they wanted, and they moved 2 years later because they hated it.
Right? Yeah, I mean, but I didn't even realize one, like you said earlier, I had no idea we could afford in this area because this was like a dream location that I'm like, I don't even think it's possible. Let's not even look so we don't get our hopes up. But yeah, I'm so glad we waited. I'm so glad we took the time.
Yeah. Um, so how did working with me and my team simplify or clarify the mortgage process for you?
Oh, you were wonderful, Amy. You and your team were so helpful. I mean, can be a very emotional process. And I know that there have been, I shed some tears on a couple of our calls, and you just made me feel, but you and your team made me feel very safe and secure, that I knew that I could trust you to give me the right answers, to give me not just what I wanted to hear, but what actually was the case, giving me hard if it needed be, like, you gave me the hard truths, but you were there for me when I didn't, when I was emotional. So I was very pleased with working with your team. I didn't feel like we were confused. If we were confused, you were quick to respond and clarify. So I would recommend your team to anybody. It was a great process.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is emotional. I mean, they say that buying your first house is right up there as far as like stress levels with, going through a divorce, going through a death in the family.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a huge process.
It was.
Yeah, so you're not alone.
Mhm.
And then was there any unexpected challenges, and how are they handled?
And we briefly talked about that, but it was true. And it wasn't even with the lending or the lending process at all. It was just falling out of escrow and having to make that choice, that this was not the right house. It wasn't the right situation. So that was, a hiccup in the process, but it turned out to be a very needed hiccup. So
Yep, absolutely. How did it feel when you officially became a homeowner?
surreal. So surreal. I mean, it had been for us, a 4-month process. So we had been waiting eagerly for that moment. But just so much joy. It was a relief too, but it was like, we are going to reap the benefits of the hard work that we put in for the last 4 months. So a lot of emotions, really all positive though.
Yeah. So you were with me for 4 months. We started the process and you got pre-approved, you went out shopping. And so it took 4 months total. But prior to that, had you been pre-approved in the past, Elise?
I don't believe so. And if I had, it wasn't anything official. It might have been something online, but I really don't know if I ever went that route.
Okay. Okay. And what would you say to another first-time home buyer who are nervous about the mortgage process?
Find somebody you trust. Find somebody that you can really trust deep in your gut, that you know that they're going to help you, point you in the right direction. Listen to what you want, and not just try to put you in a position that it's going to be good for them. You really looked out for us and took us under your wing. You understood our finances and what we were going through, but what we wanted. So truly just taking the time to find somebody that you trust. Don't just go with the first person, and listen to your gut.
Yeah, yeah, that's good advice. Absolutely.